guys, this is Coach Matt from the Scorpions. We are at the beginning of spring here in Montana. Conditions aren't obviously ideal out here. We got a lot of snow left on the ground. But I want to get this video out so we would have something as a guideline in terms of basic principles of shooting. One of the things I've seen around the state is that a lot of kids never really learn the proper mechanics to shoot. And if you don't have the proper mechanics to shoot, then it's hard to base anything else off of that in terms of offensive scoring. So we're going to go over today mostly is something called time and room shooting. Time and room shooting is when in a game you receive a pass with enough space between you and your defenseman that you can take some time to shoot. That doesn't mean a ton of time, but usually you'll have a step or two to take a relatively stationary shot. The reason that we start from this is because once you learn how to shoot from a stationary position, then you can learn how to build to do shooting on the run, which is much more difficult. So that's what we're going to be talking about. I personally like to teach overhand shooting. And as I've said before in other videos, lacrosse is a beautiful game and there are other ways to shoot, but I think if kids learn to do this first, it's very easy to build on other things. So one of the things a lot of kids like to do is they like to shoot sidearm. And I think once you master the techniques of shooting overhand, sidearm is another great way to learn to shoot. It offers you, in certain circumstances, an increased angle. So if I'm down low on the pipe here, and this is the goal, by shooting sidearm as opposed to shooting overhand, I've increased my shooting angle. The other thing is, if the cone is a defenseman, if I shoot sidearm, I can shoot around him as a screen. So there are advantages. An additional advantage is if you look at overall sidearm or three-quarter shooting, there's a little bit more velocity on the shot. But what I always say to the kids is first learn to do this. Then once you learn to master it, then we can talk about other ways to shoot. So in its essence, the reason that the overhand shot is a more accurate shot is that if I'm shooting sidearm and I release it early, the ball is going to usually go wide to one side. And if I release it late, it's going to go wide to the other. If I'm shooting overhand and I shoot too far down, it might bounce, but it'll still get on the cage. If I shoot too high, again, might be up in the cage or towards the crossbar, but in general, we're going to be more accurate in terms of getting the ball on cage. So that's why I teach it that way. It's accuracy, consistency. When we first teach kids to do the overhand shot, we start from very basic and then we move from that to more complicated things. So when we shoot overhand, it's important for kids to learn to get their hands back. So I teach two basic principles when I teach kids to shoot. The first is that when I start my shot, I want to be kissing the inside of my elbow. You can also tell them if you can see your hand, your arms are not far enough forward. So but we have them kiss their elbow, all right? And then we want their elbow up. But if they can focus on just having their hands back, that's a good place to start. Then, once they learn to shoot and they learn to follow through, I always teach them that you want to think about there's someone behind you and you're elbowing them in the face. Because if you have your hands back, the elbow in the face, you're going to be generating a good rotation on your shot. So those are the two basic things I discuss, at least with the upper body. There's some nuances, but we'll talk about them potentially in later videos, mostly because it's cold and the sun's going on. So that is the basic principle of shooting. The way we isolate that is you can have kids start, and again I'm lefty, but you want to make sure that everything you do, you teach kids to do with both hands. A kid should really learn to be able to take a shot with both hands. But if you want to isolate it, one thing you can do is just have them start on the ground and have their hands back and just work on their shot that way, okay? You can even hand them the ball. We call this the catapult drill. So just like a catapult that's loaded and we fire through. The next thing you can do is just have them stand up and do a similar thing. You hand them the ball where you want them to have their hands and then they just turn to fire. You notice that I'm very close to the cage. Initially when they're learning to shoot, I want them to focus on mechanics and not as much accuracy. Overall, especially with younger kids, we want them shooting down in the cage. Think of a up top corner shot as like a fastball. A fastball is only going to get smoked by a guy if you have enough velocity. So younger kids don't have as much velocity, so better off shooting it low. No one likes to get in the shins. No one likes to take bouncers, so it's a good way to get the ball in the cage. Good chance that you're going to score. All right, so that's what we start with in a basic way, the catapult drill. Another good way to do it is called the spin and fire drill. All right, so in the spin and fire drill, we'll have them, they will start with the ball on their stick, and we start about 5 yards off the cage, just like we are here. And then this gets the lower body into it a little bit. All right, so what we have them do is have their hands back, and then we want them to point that foot towards the opposite pipe. Now their hands are back, and then we want them to fall through, okay? So that's the spin and fire drill. Above from that, we could start having them work on making sure they transfer their weight. And so there's a drill, you can call it the pitcher drill, where they start with their hands back, and then they get their leg up like a pitcher would, okay? So a lot of shooting is similar in mechanics to a pitcher, where their arm starts back, they step, and they shoot and follow through, okay? So if they do the pitcher drill, what we're now trying to get them to think about is this weight transfer. So for the lower body, I want to be planting off my back foot, and I want to transfer my weight to my front foot. So a pitcher drill is a good way to do that. They step, and now they fire, and then they finish the shot. Notice that even though I'm starting towards the camera, when I finish, essentially now I'm facing the opposite way. So the lower body involves planting off that back leg and transferring the weight, okay? Because just like a pitcher, you can't get all your velocity from your upper body. You have to do a lot through your legs. So you do the pitcher drill. Another aspect which kids sometimes wrestle with is not snapping their top hand over. So once they learn to get their hands back, transfer their weight, you can have them try a drill with their upper body, and it's called swat the fly. So I'm just have one hand on it, and I want to learn how to get the ball on cage. So you see that it's a lot harder to get the ball on cage, so it really teaches them to snap that hand. A little caveat about sticks. A lot of times kids talk about whip and hold, but in the early ages especially, we just want them to be able to throw the ball 15, 20 yards. And likewise, we want them to be able to get a shot on the cage. So if the stick is too much whip, that's going to force the ball down. As they get stronger and bigger, whip and hold means that the ball is going to stay in the stick longer as they shoot. So if you can shoot the ball 90 miles an hour, you want some whip and hold in your stick. But if you just want to learn proper shooting mechanics and throwing mechanics, that's not a good way to do it. So that's the basic starting point. And then you can work in a little accuracy and a little distance. The next phase from that would be to have a coach do a soft toss. So if a coach does a soft toss, and we don't have an extra body here, because Harrison's holding the camera, but what we want to teach the kids to do with the soft toss is the coach would be here, and he would be flipping the ball to me. That's all he would be doing. What we want to do is we want to teach the kids to catch the ball in a loaded position. So if I'm going to shoot the ball, if I catch the ball here and pull the ball all the way back, then my defenseman's going to be on him. So what we want to do is we want to teach them to catch the ball from this loaded position, a quick cradle, and then release. So an easy way to do that is just have the coach do a soft toss. Coach does a soft toss, I learn how to catch the hands loaded. Once they grasp the idea of catching the hands loaded, then what you want to get to is more of a soft throw. So maybe what you would do is you'd have a group of players throwing a nice pass where they're looking to throw it to that loaded position, and then another working on their shot. And again, have them do it from both sides. So we'll talk about ways after that, just build on that, learning how to shoot on the run, or shooting coming from the corners, or wrist shots coming from the crease. But this is the most basic shooting method. So again, just to reiterate, what I want to do is, again, we're teaching shooting from both sides. Initially, we want to learn good mechanics from a stationary position. We're not worried as much about accuracy. We just want to get the mechanics down. Good shooting mechanics involves shooting overhand for more accuracy and consistency. Once they learn to do that, then they can learn to do sidearm or three-quarter arm or underhand shot. Changing levels, different release points for a good goalie. In Montana, let's just start with the overhand shot. So again, I'm kissing my elbow, okay? Feet about shoulder width apart. And then I'm just gonna point my foot towards that opposite corner. And then I'm gonna transfer my weight from my back leg to my front leg, elbow up. And then when I follow through, I'm transferring that weight. And now I wanna pretend I'm elbowing the guy behind me. So if I'm kissing the elbow, back leg, front foot pointed, not too far apart, athletically positioned. And then when I follow through, I'm elbowing that guy behind me. And you can see I'm facing the other direction. We'll have a lot of videos online too that give you different idea for drills. So that is the basics of shooting. Have a good day.